Today, we have made a plan. Gabriel, all good?
Yeah, all good on my side.
Okay, so let's get started. We are holding lesson 5. Now, got an interesting discussion here today. So, what we're going to talk about today is property rights. Understanding how far ownership goes, lost items, we lose something, we find something, how do we relate to that? What's our obligations when it comes to returning things that maybe we found? And I think we'll start with asking a very basic question. I've got here, let's see what we got here something on. Okay, so I got here nice speaker. Yeah? What makes this mine? Why is this mine? I'm saying this is my speaker. What, I don't know, you got your phone. What makes your phone yours? You paid for it. Okay. So because you paid for it, you bought it, it's yours. Everything that you own, you bought. And okay, so you bought it. So therefore, that transaction made it yours. Your connection is because you paid money. So therefore what?
Possession.
You took possession, but there's some things you don't pay for, huh? Let's say you find something, I don't know, you found a rock and you brought it into your house.
Because you possess it, you own it. There's an assumption that if you possess it, you own it, and this assumption can be overrun. But if you possess something, you presume to own it, unless proven otherwise.
So you're saying if it's in your possession, then you own it.
Yep, unless proven otherwise. Yeah.
So let's say I drop something.
For good, at least.
Is it his now? Because it's no longer in my possession.
But it's an assumption. As I said, it's not sure to determine English, but if you possess something, it is assumed this is yours, unless proven otherwise, as I said. But there isn't other way to prove it.
So interesting what you're saying. The question is it something real about ownership? Is it something real? Or is it just between us we kind of make an arrangement that if it's in my possession, this is mine. If it's not in my possession, it's not mine and it's yours. Or is there something like actually that like binds us to the things that are ours, that we could say, this is actually mine. It's actually mine. Does that make sense? I'm saying, let's say, think about a society where you have, I don't know, communism, where the whole concept of like mine, yours, everything belongs to the state, so everything belongs to the kibbutz, right? Kibbutz is a good example, right? There's no, you're going to split between, everything goes into the central pot, and everything belongs to everyone. This is like, and if you have ownership of something, can you give up the ownership? Can you lose ownership of something? How does that work? Is it just, again, if it's something real, is it something just, I think like thinking of it like this. Does society create our relationship with the things that we own? Or does society recognize our relationship with the things that we own? Which one is it? I think it's about that. It recognizes it. So you're saying that there's something that's intrinsic about our relationship with the things that we have, and then society and law would recognize that intrinsic connection. It's not that what creates the connection to the things we own. Okay, good. What we're going to see is that actually, philosophically, legally, there are different approaches to this question. How far does our ownership actually extend to the things that we call ours? What makes them ours? Is it something real? Is it something, or is it just like a social arrangement that kind of This is yours. I won't use it. I'll let you keep it. Others will be fighting all day. Think about it, There's nothing, I want this. No, I want this. So, okay, what you have is yours. What I have is mine. And then you have to ask permission in order to use kind of each other's property. Yeah.
Let's see what's
going to happen. Okay. It's just it's interesting to think about from Torah's perspective. That whole concept of ownership is, there's got to be something to it, because in a certain sense, you talk. Have you heard about big philanthropists in North Korea, like, or maybe in communist Russia? In a certain sense, it's like an oxymoron, because like the whole concept of like, I don't know exactly how it works, but you're not supposed to be the big guy who's giving to the small guy. You're supposed to all kind of be an equal playing field. At least that's what it's supposed to happen, right? And it doesn't always happen, but it always doesn't. Maybe the kibbutzim it happens more like that. Very idealist, also not. But so in a sense, what makes charity something real? In the Torah, there's a whole concept of charity. What makes a concept of a sacrifice, that you're taking your property, you're taking something that you own, and you're giving it up as a sacrifice. All of that comes along with an understanding. There has to be a premise here that I do own things. That there's, so the question then is, so what is the nature of this ownership? What is this ownership? What characterizes this ownership? Ultimately, what's my zikah? How attached am I to the things that we own? I think it's an interesting question, because thinking about it also nowadays, there's so much that's going into. Have you ever heard about like living minimalistic? Yeah, minimalistic living. We'll talk about that as we go on. That idea of like, that versus other ways of living. Okay. One thing just before we start looking into our books, I remember growing up, still today, there's a concept when a person has a Torah book, or really any book. He writes at the front of the book 3 Hebrew words. They go like this: La Hashem, Haaretz, Umla'ah. To Hashem, to God, is the world and all that it contains. It means that God creates the world and he's ultimately the boss, the owner of everything. And then you used to, after putting in those 3 Hebrew words and acknowledging that ultimately everything belongs to God, you would say from the library of so on and so forth. So like as a kid, I was like, so hold on a second. So is it mine or is it his? Like, what's this deal? On the one hand, I'm saying everything's his. On the other hand, I'm turning around and I'm saying, it's mine. Is that a contradiction? Do I really have ownership, or is everything God? So let's put that question aside and we'll come back to that a little bit further down the line. We're looking at the nature of ownership, and to start us off, let's take a look at 3 case studies. Okay? Hannah, you want to read for us? Case study 8. We are on page 136.
David and Mark are primary work colleagues. One day, David is terribly hungry at work and in a terrible rush to booth. He notices that Mark had stored some food in the office refrigerator, but Mark is out of the office and unreachable. David reasons that since Mark is absent, he does not need the food that day and he could replace it for him tomorrow. Considering the circumstances and their general friendly relationship, David is certain Mark would allow him to eat his food.
Okay, what do you say?
If I'm not at the edge of dying from hunger,
You wouldn't.
I wouldn't.
You wouldn't. Okay, even if you're sure that it would be fun. You're not comfortable with it.
I wouldn't be comfortable with it.
Okay, Nathaniel?
It's a different question. I wouldn't be comfortable taking someone's food, but I don't think he is writing.
Well, what?
I don't think he is writing.
What do you mean? You don't think he's right in taking?
He's right assuming that if the other person not
No, he is. Why is he not a right assuming? He knows him.
He's not right assuming. He needs
Okay.
to
He needs to.
confirm everything.
So you're saying he can assume it from today till tomorrow, but he still needs to go through the process of asking before you take someone else's thing. Gabriel, what would you say?
Based on the logic of other classes and the logic of Jewish law, as I understand it, it's highly likely that he's fine. He can take it, assuming he's able to. He can, assuming he can replace the next morning.
Okay. Let's wait and see. Case study B, Nathaniel, take it away.
Sarah strolled along the street and discovered a bracelet lying on the sidewalk. She tried her hardest to track down its owner to no avail. In your opinion, may Sarah keep the bracelet? Here, I think, yes. It says she tried, she did whatever she could.
She did whatever she could. She should be able to keep it now. Okay. Hannah?
I think the same. So I think that if she's reported it in police or put it into Facebook group of the neighborhood or whatever.
She's done what she can.
Yeah, then I think that's fine too.
Okay. Gabriel?
If this is a bona fide attempt and it failed, yes, she can keep it.
She can keep it. Three, everyone's in for Sarah keeping this beautiful bracelet that she found. Next, slight change on case B. Let's take a look. Gabriel, lead us. 137.
Leah strolls along the street and notices Naomi at a fair distance ahead of her. She watches the dismay as Naomi's bracelet falls into the gutter. Naomi tries unsuccessfully to extract the bracelet from the gutter. She throws her hand up in despair, gets into a car and drives off. When Leah reaches that spot, she lifts the gutter cover and succeeds in extracting the bracelet. In your opinion, may Leah keep the bracelet, or B, must she attempt to locate Naomi and return it? You want my opinion in here?
Yes,
she probably needs to return the bracelet. Although again, she probably needs to return the bracelet because she knows the actual owner of that bracelet.
Okay. The fact that Naomi kind of gave up and is not doesn't seem to be coming back for it, that doesn't mean that she can hold on to it.
Maybe she'll maybe, sorry, who's Leah? No, so Leah. Wait, that's Naomi's bracelet. If Naomi doesn't want it, then maybe she'll be able to tell her to keep it. But otherwise, no, she needs to return her bracelet.
Okay. So you're saying if she still wants it, even if she seems to kind of given up hope of getting it back, she's still got to return it. Anyone disagree with Gabriel? What would you say? Same?
I know the concept that if you have clear indication that someone has given up on something that they love, then you can keep. If you clear indication that
that's a Torah perspective, or that's a legal perspective? Okay.
But here, even if Leah has a clear indication that Naomi gave up, she knows who she is.
She knows who she is.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. And anything to add?
I think it depends on the situation. So if she knows Naomi personally, she can trace her obviously, and it basically be right to give it back to her. Or unless it was a taxi, she can always trace her bank based on the number plate. But if it was a taxi and she doesn't know Naomi, then
she can keep it. So then it kind of, so you would say kind of she's got to do what case study B did, make her due diligence in trying to find the owner. If she can't, she can keep it.
Yes.
Okay, good. By the way, if you ever just a good tip, what do they call life hacks? Like if you ever need to call an Uber driver, you always make the only way you can call an Uber driver after the ride has been completed, make as if you lost something in the taxi, and they'll let you call them. If you ever need it. Anyways, I've discovered. Okay. So that all of these really touch on what is ownership? How far does our ownership extend? At what point maybe can we forfeit our ownership? At what point we say we've lost ownership? At what point can we assume someone will be happy to relinquish their ownership and for us to take part of it? So let's take a look at text 1, which will then take us into the first theory of this thing called ownership. How does this work? And text 1, what are we up to? Hannah, back to you.
Hobbes and Hume argue that there is no natural mind or time, and that a property must be understood as a creation of the sovereign state, or at the very least, the artificial product of convention and turned into by all the members of society to bestow stability on the possession of external goods and leave everyone in the peaceable enjoyment of what may acquire by his fortune and industry.
Okay, so this is Hobbes and Hume are father of many, the way we view law to a great extent today. And they posit that ultimately ownership is nothing more than a social construct, meaning to say law creates, nothing is actually more. It's just that in order that society should work, like we were saying before, you're going to go around and start taking people's things. No, social construct called ownership. In order for people to be able to live together in a kind of, that's how as far as ownership goes. Interesting. So nothing is actually inherently wrong. It's just an arrangement, that social arrangement that we've made in how we live together. This is one kind of common understanding of ownership. And let's take a look at a second approach. Then take it away.
John Locke, on the other hand, was adamant that property could have been instituted in a state of nature without any special conventions or political decisions.
Mhm.
Locke did not place his resolution on this difficulty on any theory of universal consent. Instead, in the most famous passage of his chapter on property, he gave a moral defense of the legitimacy of unilateral appropriation. Though the earth,
It's a little bit, I think we'll skip this because it's just a little bit hard to read. But it's in Old English. John Locke, famous philosopher, he lays out really a father in a big way of common law the way we view it today. He says no. The term which is used often is he describes ownership as kind of an ontological reality, which means there's an inherent reality to ownership. Your body, even just in the text here, your body you own, and as an extension of the fact that you put, like a little bit what you said, Nathaniel, at the beginning, I put some work, some of myself into something to acquire it, to bring it into my domain. As an extension of my body, my ownership extends into the things around. And therefore, things which I own are actually mine. They're truly mine. Because of the fact that my body is something which is inherently mine, these things are an extension of my body by the fact that I've invested myself in them, and therefore, they're mine. Okay? So it's a deeper understanding of what this thing called ownership is. Something much more inherent connection to things. Okay, let's take a look now at our three case studies, and try and understand how each of them would be resolved based on their understanding of what ownership is. May David eat Mark's food? Based on Hobbes and Hume. It's a social arrangement ownership. Would you say that based on that, you should be able to eat someone else's food? There's, like you said, there's understanding that this person will be totally okay. I'll replace it tomorrow. I'm not running away. I'm not stealing. He's not eating it now. Can I just go ahead and eat it?
In this case, yes.
You would say yes. What about the fact that it's an ontological thing? Let's say the second text based on John Locke, that you've got a deeper ownership to something. Can someone just go and take it without asking express permission?
Wait,
Huh?
what Locke is saying is that it's yours only if you created it from your own hands and from your own work. It really depends whether she made that meal herself or not. And based on Locke's view, it would be hers only if she made that meal herself, not if she bought it.
Okay.
And on the first point, on the arrangement, Ob's view, yes, she will be able to take it, and this is because this is a fungible good. She can be replaced. It's not hers per se, because this is a good that can be replaced by the exact same. It's fungible. It's not like something unique. As a result, yeah. Well, you get the idea.
So again, Gabriel, he's not saying necessarily that the person actually has to go and catch the tuna to farm the tuna from the sea and then, go and he's saying that ultimately, since you invest yourself in something, if you would have invested yourself in money and gone and toiled, and that money now goes and buys something, that reality now extends to the thing that your money bought, and therefore that thing is inherently yours. That's the understanding of what he's saying, which means that there's whatever you've purchased, whatever you've earned through your labor, through your efforts, ultimately are truly yours as an extension of who you are. So in a certain sense, in the first thing, I think it seems to be based on that. There's not the fact that you can't assume someone allows, you need to get his permission on. Social construct, yeah, maybe that's fine. Okay, I'll replace it tomorrow, that should be fine. Let's take a look. Sarah keeping the bracelet, what would you say? She tried her best to find the bracelet. Can she now go ahead and keep it? Social construct. If it's social construct, you're saying she can. She's done her best, and ownership now, the previous person's ownership is not going to carry over because she's kind of out of the picture already. What about if it's something ontological? It's the same.
The person gave up.
You're saying because it's not necessarily gave up.
He doesn't consider it part of him the way it is.
Okay, it's no longer part of their reality. You're saying it's kind of gone. The ownership has left it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He denied ownership. Let's say in his mind,
Because of the fact that
he cannot locate it.
because he can't locate it. Okay. Okay, interesting. Would it make a difference if they are hoping to find it again? I'm saying, if you lost the bracelet, would you say bracelets would you hope to find again, or once it's gone, it's gone?
I think you will always hope to find something you lost.
Right.
What are the chances of that?
But interesting. I'm saying if you lost a 50-pound bill and you lost the bracelet, what's the chances that which one is it more realistic to hope that you'll get it back? The bracelet. Much more unique, right? So there is a sense that, like, okay, maybe someone's going to, Okay, interesting. Third case, in the case where Leah keeping the bracelet. So she sees, can she keep the bracelet, and does she have to try to find Naomi? Based on the social construct, what would you say? Try your best to find the owner. That's ownership. It's yours. Why should you go ahead and take it? If you can find out who the owner is, that's your duty. Okay. Based on understanding that ontological reality, that things are extended to someone else. Yeah, it seems like Naomi kind of gave up on trying to find it. Do you think that maybe that impacts on her ownership of this thing now? It does. Okay. Interesting. Gabriel, anything to add?
No, I think that summarizes everything.
Okay. Anything, Anna?
I think so. So she gave up ownership. So in both phases,
Okay, interesting. So the first is, the first case, we don't really know what the loser's feeling is towards the thing. The second case, we kind of gave a little bit more of a sense, right? Will that make a difference? Perhaps, based on our understanding of ownership. But what's suddenly interesting is suddenly we realize that something we take so easily for granted as, something ownership. This is mine. So just the viewing, the way we actually view that changes suddenly how we would deal with the crisis of can I eat someone's lunch or can't I eat someone's lunch? Which then brings us to, so we really need a sense of a good understanding of what is the value of ownership. And that's exactly what we're learning now from a Jewish standpoint. What's the Jewish value of ownership? This is the legal side. But for me to stand there in front of that sandwich when I'm hungry, can I eat the sandwich? That's an important question to understand from a value standpoint. How do we view these things? How should we? What's that lens to view? And the Torah gives us such a lens. Now, let's take a look at the Jewish perspective. Now, before we get into text 3, let me give you a little bit of background. Text 3. Text 3 takes us to the story, the biblical story of Jacob and Esau. Jacob, we know Jacob, the whole story where he stole brothers from the blessings of his brother. Remember, his mother told him to go in and act as if he was Esau. He gets the blessings, and then he runs away to his future father-in-law, and he works by him, because his brother isn't exactly very happy about it. His brother wants to kill him, right? You remember that story? Jacob is on his way back, traveling back to his hometown, and he says, what's with my brother? Is he still mad at me? And he sends messengers to go greet Esau. And those messengers come back with this report: Esau's coming 400 men. Jacob is nervous. What does this mean? It seems like Esau's coming to attack him. And he prepares in 3 ways. He prepares a gift for Esau. He splits the camp into many segments, and he prays. And then we encounter this very strange story, which kind of comes in the middle of it, where Jacob encounters a man and has a fight with her. Remember that story? And as Jacob's name actually gets changed now, he gets the name Israel. That's when the name Israel is actually born, right after that part. The text 3, Jacob took his family and transported them across the stream, and then he brought his possessions across. Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the break of dawn. This, from the rest of the story, it becomes clear that this is an angel. It's not just a regular man that he's wrestling with. He gives Jacob a blessing and changes his name. Now, what's Jacob doing, leaving alone? He brought his families across. Was he still? How did he end up alone? So the Talmud tells us something fascinating. Okay, text 4. Rabbi Elazar explains that the reason Jacob found himself alone and exposed to danger was because he had returned to get some small jars that had remained behind. The episode informs us that the righteous individuals cherish their possessions more than their own bodies. Why do they care so much? Well, they never touch stolen property. What? Is that what you would expect? The more pious the righteous someone is, the more he should. What do you think? What's up with Jacob? He forgot some jars. So he's going to risk his life and crossing to the other side of the thing, staying by himself. And from this we learn that they value the possessions more than that. What's going on? I'm saying, generally speaking, when we envision righteous people and holy people, we kind of view them as being a little less attached to their possessions, not more attached to their possessions. From this, it seems that more attached to possessions, that's his righteousness. That's the definition of righteousness. What's going on here? So we have a fascinating text from the Baal Shem, which really sheds a lot of light into this whole discussion and gives us a basic understanding of Jewish perspective of ownership. And where are we up to? Who's trying to read here? From them? Go for it. Text 5.
The Torah is highly protective.
Yeah.
The Torah is highly protective of people's personal assets. This is a result of major spiritual principles that whichever material items we use, the garments we wear, the food we eat, or the utensils we utilize, we derive benefits from the spiritual force present within each item, of the spiritual presence within. Specific sparks of spirituality are embedded within each item, and through divine providence, items that are used by particular individuals harbor the specific sparks that are related to their soul. As a result, when we use a utensil, eat food, or wear garments to satisfy our corporal needs, we hereby repair the spiritual sparks embedded within them, because we subsequently serve God with the energy that our body requires for that item. We must therefore be highly protective of our possessions, of whatever we own, out of concern for the individual spiritual forces they possess.
Okay. Very, very interesting. So here's the Baal Shem Tov telling us that our connection to the things that we possess is actually very, very specific. Whoopa. My phone is dying.
I don't hear anything.
Yeah, me neither.
He may not have. He's probably out of battery.
Yeah, on the most interesting place.
Yeah.
Shall we send a message to the chat box? Or
I'm confident that that he's just run out of battery, but I'm gonna send him a message.
mm,
I've sent him a message, but again, I think he's.
oh yes. Think.
Hi
you
everyone.
say-
Hi Lubov.
Hi.
Hello.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
The phone.
Hello, we can't hear you.
Sorry everyone. Apologies.
No worries.
There we are. Let's see if the camera is working here. Hold on one sec, Beryl. There we are. Mazel tov. Yes. Mazel tov. Very nice. Good job. Okay, not. Okay, so what are we up to? Baal Shem Tov. We're up to the Baal Shem Tov. Lulav, just to keep you posted. Thank you. Yes, it is actually recording. Who's recording? Me? I don't think it's me. Record. Please ask
I
the
get
host.
yeah, I get name host, so I might be. Let me share
I
with you.
think you might be the host, Gabriel, again. Oh, Lubov, no, Gabriel, you're recording. Do you want me to record it? Do you want to stop and then there we are. Okay, I'm on. Thank you. Recording, perfect. Okay, so we're taking a look at the Baal Shem Tov, and Lubov, just to catch you up, we're trying to get an understanding on the Jewish understanding of what is ownership. How do you define this thing called ownership? What is there a reality to us owning things? Is owning things just a way of between social arrangements so that society should work in a nice functional way, but there's nothing real and true to it, so we don't really inherently own anything, or we truly do own things? And we encountered the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov tells us that in fact, everything that we own is because specifically us, specifically me, I have the power to be the one to take this thing's spiritual side, its spark, and restore that spark, elevate that spark to where it's supposed to be. What is that talking about? It talks about, the Baal Shem Tov tells us, every single thing in this world has a physical reality and a spiritual reality. Like as people, we have a body and a soul, so too, every object also has a soul element to it. It's spiritual spark, the divine spark which animates it. And the things that we own are the things that specifically us are able to elevate that spark and bring this thing to its purpose and use it out in the right way. And by using it out in the right way, we're able to elevate it and connect it to its spiritual source, and like plug it into its spiritual power. So what it turns out from the Baal Shem Tov is a fascinating idea. Yours property is that, let's say sometimes you would think, I have even like the Baal Shem Tov even articulates it like this. You might have a craving for something. You want to eat something. So biologically, you might say, okay, the reason why you want to is because, I don't know, you're hungry now, so you want to go and eat something. Well, we're familiar with this concept, especially when you're educating children. One of the key things to know is that kids acting up, there's a reason why the kid's acting up. If a kid starts throwing things, the kid starts not listening, the kid's doing something, usually you might ask him why He'll tell you because someone hurt me, because I'm annoyed, because in truth, at the core of that is that the kid just wants connection. He right now wants you to be connected with him. He wants your attention, and you're not giving him attention. So you'd rather he's going to make a storm, so you should get your attention. It might be not the kind of attention that's the best attention, you know. Bad publicity, but any bad publicity is still publicity. So the kid understands that, and he's going to make a storm. He'll make a same thing with food. Sometimes we feel like I want something sweet now. And the truth is, the reason is because your blood sugar is low, whatever it is. You might think, oh, the reason I want something sweet now is because, I like ice cream. But in truth, there's something biological that's really underneath it, which is driving you in that direction. And the Baal Shem Tov tells us the same thing when it comes to our spiritual reality. Sometimes we're drawn to certain things because spiritually, our soul senses that we have a connection with that thing, and specifically through us interacting with that thing, we're able to bring that thing to its purpose. We're able to utilize that thing, and that's waiting for our soul interaction to interact with the spark with us in that thing. And it's a wild idea. So what happens then is then I own something. I specifically am the one who can impact it, and my things are very important that I remain, because only through me are these things able to really reach their fruition. Every single thing needs a specific soul with its specific abilities in order to reach its purpose. What happens when I'm going to go and take something and sell it to someone else? Well, it means that this object now, obviously, now needs another, from a mystical standpoint, it needs another person involved for that person to bring their element into this object's fulfillment. And my job with this object has now come to an end. So this is a whole nother, opens up a whole world to understanding our connection with our things and understanding even our responsibility in our ownership. Owning something is actually a responsibility. It means that while we have something, there's something we specifically can achieve with this object that someone else wouldn't be able to achieve. And therefore, it's on us to discover in which way can I utilize this object for making the world a better place, for making this world a more godly place, and utilize this object. Is a car just to take me and take sports cars, or is it maybe so that I should be able to give an old man a ride? Maybe that's the thing that this object is waiting for me specifically to use in the purpose to bring its purpose and plug its spiritual spark in. Got it? So now we can come back to the story of Yaakov. If you're a tzaddik and you're a righteous man, suddenly, if you've got a few objects that are left behind and they're yours, that's a reason to go across the river again and get them, because you recognize the value and importance of every single one of your property and recognize how that plays a role within your spiritual divine service. I've got something here that's sitting there and it's waiting for me to pick. I can't just say, okay, forget about it. Those are unfinished business. I need to make sure that I'm taking care of the things that are within my responsibility. And those objects are kind of calling out to me and saying, hey, you've got a duty here to do it. That's actually what it means, the stealing. We said, in a certain sense, well, the truth is everything belongs to God, like we were saying before. So then how can I partake within anything? Because God says, I'm giving you things and it becomes yours. But use it out in the way that you're supposed to use it out. Use it out to fulfill the purpose of the things. And if I'm not using out the things in the way, I'm just using it out for whatever, but I'm not truly tuned into my responsibility vis-a-vis the objects, in a certain sense, I'm stealing. How am I stealing? I'm stealing because I've been entrusted and given these things for a purpose. And that's why it's mine, so that I can truly fulfill that purpose. If I'm not fulfilling that purpose, then in a certain sense, I never deserved having it in the first place. There's a certain, like almost like a theft element to it. Does that make sense? We talk about a concept of blessing. People, we say blessings before eating. And one of the understands why we say blessings before eating is because of this idea. Everything in the world, God created the world. Everything really belongs to him. So before I partake in something, I need to kind of ask permission for it. Right? That's the basic understanding of blessings. But the truth is, when we tune into the concept of blessings even more, we recognize by saying a blessing, I'm actually tuning into the purpose of why altogether I'm able to consume this food in the first place. I'm able to interact with this food in the first place. And therefore it's truly mine, so that I should be able to utilize it for its purpose that I've been given it. So, yeah. What it leaves us with from this understanding of Baal Shem Tov is we truly understand that, similar to what we've said until now, that ownership is an ontological reality. There's a spiritual connection between us and our things. There's something that bonds us between them. And in this case, what the Baal Shem Tov tells us, it's connected to our essence. This thing is in my possession because only me do I have the ability to do what this object needs right now. And I need to interact with it to bring out that object's purpose and elevate its sparks. So it's definitely not a social construct. This is something that's a reality. It's unlike John Locke, who spoke about a soul connection to a body connection. I put my body into this thing. The Baal Shem Tov is focusing on this is an extension of my soul. My soul connection extends also to the items which I own. Does that make sense? Any questions before we move on? There's a lot to think about there. Because straight away this takes us into, okay, so I've got a cupboard full of stuff. What is it still sitting there for? Should I be living in a more minimalistic kind of lifestyle? Should I be hoarding? What's the point of hoarding? Hoarding just seems like I'm just building up stuff. But if I'm not utilizing those things, if I'm not really interacting those things in a meaningful, purposeful way, what's the purpose of having these things in the first place? It's an interesting idea. It makes us suddenly recognize that ownership is actually a responsibility, which is something which in Judaism takes very far. Take a look at the end of our class today, which I'm going to just jump to it because I feel it's important to talk about now. This takes us to a concept of page 156, sorry. Concept of utilization of things. Can you waste?
Yeah, based on what you just said, if you don't fulfill its purpose, your purpose, yes.
So you're wasting. Are you allowed to actively go ahead and waste something? Is there a problem with that? So there's a famous law when you lay text 14a, when you lay siege to a city for an extended period of time as part of a battle to capture it, do not destroy its fruit-bearing trees. So you're in the middle of battle and you see a tree which has fruit on it. The Torah says, don't destroy this tree. Don't. Why? It's a fruit-bearing tree. Don't cut it down. And if you even if you have a fruit tree in your garden and you want to cut it down, it's not so simple just in Jewish law to just cut down a fruit tree. Okay. What's that's an example of law. Maimonides tells us this really extends a lot further. 14b. This prohibition is not restricted to fruit trees. Anyone that shatters utensils, tears garments, destroys buildings, plugs a natural spring, or ruins fruit with destructive intent, transgresses the Torah's prohibition of do not destroy. Everything has a purpose. Everything has value. And therefore, me going and actively displaying something is running counter to why we own. So John Locke really focuses on how we own. He's focusing on the body of things. How do we own something?
We own something because I invested in myself. He's talking about it's not a social contract. I invested myself in something, and therefore my ownership extends to the things that I invested myself in. The Baal Shem Tov is telling us why we own. We own because of our responsibility vis-a-vis the things that come into our realm. We've got an obligation towards them. We've got a responsibility to the world around us to bring the things to their purpose, to utilize them in the right way. And when we do that, we're utilizing our responsibility and we're actively responsible. When we're not doing that and we're destroying things, what you have no license to destroy something. You only have a license to use it productively, which is a very interesting. I found it to be a fascinating idea. Okay. Any questions?
Can I ask a question? I have many, but one, how can I throw away food, for example, if I know that I'm not going to eat it, but it is still good? So if I throw it away, it will be destroying.
Okay, so that's a good.
Or I should not throw it away, and I should wait for it to get spoiled. Right.
So that's a good question. How far? What are the ins and outs of Bal Tashchis, which is the category of laws of not wasting? Is there times where you can throw things out? How far do you need to go to say, I've tried my best, and now I'm at this point. I can go ahead and just put them in the bin. I think it's a little bit beyond the scope of what we're going to talk about now, but I can send you some source afterwards just to read through the basic understandings of the Bal Tasha, the guidelines of when yes and when not and things like that. Yeah, but excellent question. Excellent question. This is actually, I think this is really interesting because also we talk about in general in society, we're into the concept of we have a responsibility to the environment to a certain degree, and I think this is something which is interesting because it's coming more and more into our awareness, this concept of our responsibility to the environment around us. It's not just that we can live and just abuse, we need to actually make sure to take care, because ultimately it's us at the end of the day. Exactly, which was Adam was instructed with. And this concept within Judaism is a fundamental concept in Judaism. So much so that it says that in the times of Mashiach, we're going to walk down the street and the stone will call out and says, what is this? You walked on me and you didn't, you just walked on me and trampled over me. You didn't even elevate me in any way. You were talking gossip while you walked on me. What gave you the right to walk on me? What makes you think that you're better than me? Which is a wild concept. Unless we're using the things that we've been entrusted in a valuable, true purpose, then in a sense, we're no better than the inanimate. We only are in the position to be able to utilize the world when we utilize the world constructively and bring the world to a better place through utilizing it. But if we're actually going to use the world in a detrimental way, we have no right to use the world in the first place, which is a wild concept. Okay, let's get back. Ownership. Let's take a look now at how this plays out in the legal sphere of our text, our case studies that we opened up with tonight. So let's start with the first case study. Quick recap. First case study was you're at work and you're hungry. There's a sandwich there. Your friend would be okay with you taking it, or you can fairly assume that's the kind of guy he is. Can you go and eat it? And you'll give him back a new sandwich tomorrow. Is that okay? Now, anyone remember in lesson 1, we actually spoke about some of this, about utilizing, parking your car in someone else's driveway. Remember that discussion? Yeah? And what was our example, our conclusion there, if you remember? Can you park your car in someone else's driveway without asking them permission?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, Gabriel?
No, from what I recall, the idea was that if that person does not use that parking at this very moment, you are allowed to do it. And it causes no harm. Yeah.
Cause no harm, exactly. It's the concept of zenena v'zelo chasser. If you're benefiting and this person is not losing out, then that's perfectly fine. So let's transplant that to our situation here. You have no, in case they're in the parking, someone cannot say you're not allowed, if you don't suffer any harm as a result, then you have no reason to object. That we said was like storm-like conduct otherwise. Let's put that into our case here. This fellow is not going to eat his sandwich. He's not here. You're giving him a sandwich tomorrow when he's going to need it. So you would conclude theoretically that he could just go ahead and eat the sandwich.
Not the same sandwich.
Not the same. Why?
It's not the same sandwich.
It's not the same sandwich. Okay, and therefore?
Maybe it's a proper replacement, but it's not the same.
Good. Interesting. Okay, so what you're saying, let's take a look at how it plays out in text 6. Page 144. Lubov, can we honor you with reading?
Yes.
Page 144.
Yes. If you enter a private orchard or garden, you may not pick its fruit without express permission from its owner. This applies even if the owner of the orchard is your dear friend and will certainly be extremely pleased to hear that you enjoy their fruits. Nevertheless, since the owner is unaware of your actions in real time, it is forbidden to benefit from the fruit. This principle applies in all similar cases. The public must be cautioned regarding this law because it is commonly transgressed due to lack of awareness.
Okay. Very interesting. Gabriel, a little different from what you were expecting, I guess. Here, this is a very formalistic approach. Jewish law says, and the key difference here is, Jewish law says, if you cannot take someone else's thing and just use it, even if you know they would be happy that you took it. It would say, oh, you entered my blood, thank you. I love when people come, well, maybe not. I'm so happy that you got a chance to enjoy my fruit, you know? Not okay. Why? Because the difference here is that here you're consuming someone else's things. In the case of parking the car, what are you doing? You're using someone else's property. The property's there, it hasn't been changed. You're just using it. And if it doesn't cause him any harm, then you can use it. And he can't say, you know, I don't want you to use it just because it's mine. That's not okay. If it's something that some other person can benefit from, it doesn't cause you any harm, you're expected in Jewish law to let that person benefit from it. However, here, you're not using someone else's thing, you're consuming someone else's thing. You're, like you said, tomorrow when you're going to give them back the sandwich, it's a different sandwich. What does it make a difference? So let's look. If ownership is a social construct, so you can say, who cares? You know, I gave him back a new sandwich. Like, you know, it's not stealing. But if that sandwich is ontological connection with that person, there's an intrinsic connection between him and that object. I can't use that until I get permission from him to be able to go and consume it. I have no right to go and touch someone else's property. That's his. That's a real thing, this ownership.
What's the difference between this and parking in the driveway? Because you never know that your friend is going to be back in 10 minutes and you can't park this car.
Okay, so the case there we spoke about was, it's clear that your friend went away on vacation, and it's clear that he's not. Yeah, can you park? I don't ask him to park in his driveway. Can I park in his driveway?
Yeah,
and
if you know that he's away on.
Yeah, it's not going to cause him harm. Can he stand on principle and say it's my property? You have to ask first. So in Jewish law, we say no, you don't even have to. It's better to ask first. But if you didn't ask, you're able to park without any issue. And he would have to give you permission. Why? Because he's benefiting, you're benefiting, it doesn't cause him any harm. That's what's expected of him to allow you to benefit. Whereas here, you're impacting on the person's ownership of his property. That you cannot do without his permission. There is an exception. That exception is where it becomes so every single time. If it becomes very clear that, you know, this fellow always says, you should just know, whenever I have a sandwich in the fridge and you're hungry, eat it. Or he's the kind of guy who takes his sandwiches and puts them on the counter because he's so that anyone can take it. Then permission's being given. You don't need a permission every single time. But in generally, you can't just assume permission, even if he's the kind of guy. If you could say the guy gave permission, not explicitly, that's a different story. Got it? Okay. That deals with case study A. Let's move on to our lost objects discussion. Now, you ever heard of finders, keepers, losers, weepers? We used to say that in school. You found it, you keep it, and the guy who lost it, no, it's too bad. So how does that play out in Jewish law? So let's take a look at text 7. First, looking in common law, and then we'll go into how it plays out in Jewish law. Lubov, you just read for us, Gabriel. A piece of law from Cornell.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great source. I've read that piece already. At common law, a person who found lost personal property could keep it until and unless the original owners comes forward. This rule applied to people who discover lost property in public areas, as well as people who discover lost property on their property. Many jurisdictions have statutes that modify the common law statements of lost property. Typically, these statutes require lost personal property to be turned over to a government official, and that if a property is not claimed within a set period of time, it goes to the finder, and the original owner's right of the property are terminated.
Okay, thank you. This is how lost property works typically within common law. Now let's take a look how it works within Jewish law. Hannah, text 8, page 146.
If you see your flowers, ox or sheep straying, do not ignore it. Be sure to return it to its owner. If the owner is not near you, or if you do not know the owner's identity, take it home with you and keep it until you come for it, whereupon you shall return it. Do the same if you find their donkey, garment, or anything else they have lost. You may not ignore it.
Okay. Exercise 5.2. How does the biblical commandment of returning lost property differ?
I don't hear you anymore. You hear Luba?
No, I cannot hear either.
Yeah, I think he can't hear us too.
Keep it until the owner within, let's say, a certain amount of time, or yeah. And whereas, what would you say within Jewish law?
That you should definitely trace back or wait for the owner to turn up.
Okay, absolutely right. Within Jewish law, you can never use that item. You keep that item stays, is held indefinitely. There's no expiration time about how long you need to hold that item. Whereas in common law, you give depending on the period of time, whether within, there's different jurisdictions would lay out how long you need the police hold on to it, whatever it is, but then it can be used. Within Jewish law, that doesn't expire. What else?
I think the concept of involving the government.
Okay.
Involving the government suggests that there's some secular law that it's actually a social convention. The ownership is social convention. That's why you are involving someone who's responsible, not just between you and me.
Okay, interesting.
In Judaism, it's you and me directly.
Interesting. So why actually do we involve the police or whatever it is in it?
Ask the people.
Okay, yeah, I think,
Because origin of ownership is not, is self-convention.
so what, but, okay, interesting. So you're saying the reason you actually give it over to the government because we don't trust, and therefore give it over, it's not yours, give it over to the government official. Interesting. I thought any other reasons? I thought actually the reason was because the chances of a person coming back to claim their object, they go back to a public body to do it, and therefore you need to give it over to the public body so that the person has a chance of coming back to get it. Is any insight? Does anyone have an opinion? Is that why do we actually? What's the idea of giving it over to a government official?
It's a third party that is. It's a trusted third party, nothing more. And you're right. This is when you lost something on the streets, you have no idea who will get it, but you know there is a place where lost properties on the street will be returned, collected. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So yeah, interesting how it works. So and the second one is definitely within Jewish law, you have a responsibility to go and seek out the owner. Something's lost, you have a responsibility to go seek out the owner. Within common law, definitely some jurisdictions maybe you have to give it over to a government official, but definitely the same way you're not entrusted. Seeking out the owner means I have to go and put up signs all over the place. I need to
Doesn't giving it to a government is essentially like reaching out to someone looking searching for them.
okay.
There is a dedicated place that everyone knows.
Right.
If I lose something, I go there. That's the effort they make to
Within common law. Within Jewish law, that wouldn't be enough. You need to make a concerted effort as much as possible, whatever within reason, to put it where the object was lost, to put up signs, to put up.
So I'm saying the lost and found department of the government
Good.
would be the reasonable effort.
In common law. That's the very least.
It's the equivalent of reasonable effort that we can find in Jewish law.
I'm saying that would be the very least. Within Jewish law, you're expected to actively go and. So this is a passive thing. You've given it over, your responsibility is over. Whereas in the Jewish law, you actually have to actively go and try to find.
The lost and found department, and everyone knows that it's there. That's
Right.
That's your effort.
Right. So you've
That's
given it
not
over to them.
actively-
Right. First of all, I don't know if that's everywhere that's actually the legal requirement. That's first of all. But yeah, that's a little bit of an idea. I'm saying it's we see signs all over the place of, let's say, lost cat, lost rat. You see all the times lost signs. But really, Judaism, within Jewish law, the idea is to create a society where there's found signs all over the place. Found this, found this, found this, which is really a whole different concept of how to view, that care for. You need to go and seek out the other person. And you'll see it actually in more religious communities. There's always found this, call this number. There's a concept of Hashavat Aveda, returning a lost item. And you've got to make all the effort you can to try find the owner who's lost this item. It's not enough to just say, okay, I'll put it there. And no, you really need to seek out the owner. Okay, so far we've got two things. It stays indefinitely, remains within Jewish law, within common law, after a certain period of time you can take it. The second thing is you need to seek out the owner. One last thing, one important last thing. Anyone? One other thing that within Jewish law is another requirement which doesn't exist within common law.
It says that you shouldn't keep it until they return it. So you can't even give it to the police to take a portion of it.
Okay, interesting.
Well, what I don't understand about the situation is, for example, keeping a sheep incurs a lot of financial burden on you.
Good.
So
Good question.
how long are you expected to keep it if you can't afford it?
So you're a very good question. That is discussed. Basically, what you would then do is you would you wouldn't bear any financial loss, but any costs associated with taking care of the sheep, if you could sell the sheep, for example, and then return the person the money, that would be another option if you don't have a way of being able to, and then the money would sit till the owner comes. Or you would use the things that the sheep puts out wool, it puts out milk, you sell that and you feed the sheep till the owner comes, or things like that. Okay. Last point is do not ignore it. In Torah, it's not enough that you have a responsibility if you picked up a lost item. Now what do you do with it? In Torah law, you have a responsibility to pick up the lost item in the first place. Within legal, in common law, there's no such thing. You have no obligation to go and pick up something which you see is clearly lost and then try to find the owner. If you picked it up and you have it, now what do you do with it? That's when law starts stepping into the picture. But actually a responsibility to go and actually lift it, that doesn't exist. Okay? Okay. Now, what's the deal? One thing which we're going to focus on is this text number 9, 147, this perpetual limbo. If an announcement or notification regarding the discovered item was made and the owner did not come to claim it, the item should remain in possession of the finder until the arrival of Elijah the prophet. When does Elijah the prophet come?
When he comes.
At the end of time, I'm saying when Mashiach comes. Elijah is really the one who's, any time where you have something of unclear ownership. So within Jewish law, that's the expression used. That sits there until Eliyahu comes. It's almost like you could say that's the silliest thing ever. Who's going to benefit from this thing sitting? No one's going to benefit from it. So if ownership is a social construct, then it makes no sense. You're absolutely right. It's a unilateral thing. The whole point is supposed to be useful. If it's useful, then go ahead and if he's not using it because he doesn't know where it is, so then at least you should be able to use it and go and enjoy it. But if ownership is a real thing, and at the point we're saying at this point, you can't use it because you're not sure that this ownership, his ownership has been relinquished from it, has been forfeited from it, and therefore you can't take it and take it into your responsibility. It's a real thing. It's his thing still. I can't use it. I can't take it. Therefore it sits until Eliyahu comes, and I can't bring it into my domain until there's a clear determination of whose it is. And that's, we might need Elijah to come and resolve for us in such certain situations. Okay? So therefore you see it again. What does that mean for our case study? So case study B, let's say, where we had Sarah. And she picked up this lost bracelet, right? Can she keep it?
Yes.
Can she go and enjoy it? So based on what we saw now, she has to try all she can to try to get it back, find the owner, and then if she hasn't found the owner, she has to put it in her drawer and it stays there. She can't enjoy it. It's not hers. That's someone's. Whose it is, I don't know, but it's not mine. And I can't claim ownership of it. It's going to stay there. Interesting. Okay. There is an exception to this idea, which goes into the concept of when someone gives up hope of getting it back. And that's interesting, where actually within Jewish law, our approach to the stolen and lost item is more lenient than common law. So until now, we're saying, we pointed out details where actually Jewish law is more stringent on the finder, and he has to go make the effort, and he has to pick up the object, and he has to put it aside till Elijah comes because he can't use it. There is an instance where it's actually more lenient. When? In the case where it's clear that the owner has given up hope of retrieving this item. If the owner has given up hope and becomes clear, how is it clear? Either, let's say, because where the item was lost. The guy went, he's on the beach, he went out into the water and his watch fell off. And you're by the beach and comes the tide brings in a watch. Now, whoever thinks they're ever going to get their item back once it's been swept out in the sea, no one. Therefore, in such a case, you could assume the owner has lost, it's gone. And even if it's a kind of watch, which you could say, I can try find out who the owner is and all that, you have no responsibility to even try find the owner. The fact that this person gave up his ownership, he relinquished his ownership because he gave up hope, therefore means you can now claim ownership of it. You don't even have to seek out the owner. Does that sound like fair? Should you not still try seek out the owner?
But
Okay.
how can we find out if the owner gave up?
Good question. So
Because even in the example, maybe the woman had to pick up her child from a hospital. So she left, but her intention was to come back with her husband and to open this thing. And
The
then
truth
she
is-
would come and it will not be there.
I like that, Livo. The truth is, when I read the case, that's exactly what I thought. I wouldn't see that and assume that means she's given up hope. I would assume she's going to come back when she has more time to try to extract it from the thing. Right. But the situation, that's why maybe the concept, the idea of like the sea case is more of an example. So really it's two. One of them is either the place that they lost it is the kind of place where no one ever expects that they'll get the item back. Or the second option is the object that was lost is a kind of object that the person never expects they'll get back. For example, you're walking down the street and you lost 50 pounds. How's anyone going to know it's my 50 pounds? If it's a bracelet, which has some identifying marks and someone can put up a sign, this is yours, or I could put up a sign lost and someone will say, oh, I found it. That can maybe. But it's a 50-pound note. Someone walked down the street, he saw it's 50 pounds. We can start trying to figure out whose it is. How are you going to figure out whose it is? You know how it is when you pick up 50 pounds. Did someone lose 50 pounds? And the first guy says, yeah, I lost 50 pounds. You can't argue with that, right? So in those two situations where hope, where you could assume that the person is called Yush, the person gave up hope of reclaiming their item, in those cases, you're actually allowed to take the item immediately without requirement and responsibility even to seek out the owner. However, this is a lot I'm skipping over here, but there is an idea which we do say that even so, there's a concept going beyond the letter of the law and saying even so you don't have an obligation to seek out the owner. Beyond the letter of the law, the person should still try and make the effort to seek out the owner. And that kind of answers up for us the third case study where there it's assumed that the person gave up hope and therefore you would be able to keep the item. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but in the third case, that we know who the person was that lost the item.
Doesn't make a difference. Doesn't make a difference. That's what's crazy. Okay, let's say you could even know who it is. You see the person, not necessarily you know they are. You saw the person, but the fact that they gave up hope from the standpoint of recognizing that you, from let's say just taking the logical, you have an intrinsic relationship with your items. But the moment that relationship, if you want to just see it inside, you could see this long text, and you'll read it on your own time, text 13. That relationship extends, you need to be conscious, you need to hold on to that thing in your conscious reality still. If in your conscious reality, you completely given up any ownership of that, because I don't ever believe I'm going to get this item back ever again. I've given up hope of reclaiming this thing. So then all your ownership of it has been relinquished. And then another person can take it because they're not taking your item. They're taking an ownerless item. That's the difference. So should you still maybe go beyond the letter of the law and try seek out the owner? Maybe. That's beyond the letter of the law. But according to the strict principle of the law, standing on principle, the way the Torah views ownership, once the person is given up hope, just an important point to realize, given up hope before you picked up the item, which is a big caveat. You have to assume that the person gave up hope before you picked up the item. The example of the sea is a very good example. But not every time someone dropped a bracelet on the floor, you can't just assume the person gave up hope before you picked up the item, because why should they have given up hope? You know, but an example of like when those two situations are in place, where it's like a $50 bill, or it's a or the sea, where the place has been lost, and then you could say, okay, I picked it up. The person never expected to get it back. Now I can keep this item. Got it? So just to point out, even in the case where Jewish law would allow you to keep it, because let's say you live in a society, in a country where there's still an obligation to take it to the government or whatever it is, that Jewish law would say you have to uphold the legal principle and still take it to lost and found or whatever it is. But on the reverse, where Jewish law is stricter, you would then also just, you can't suffice with the fact just saying, okay, legally I've fulfilled my obligations. The Jewish law would say, no, you actually have an obligation to go seek out that one. You have an obligation to, etc., etc. Okay. I hope that was clear. Laila Tov. Good seeing you all. Sorry about the technological hiccups.
No worries. Yeah,
Thank
that
you.
was instructive.
Bye.
Thank you.
All the
Thank you,
best.
Shnar.
Laila
Laila
Tov.
Tov. Bye-bye.
Good seeing
Thank you. Bye
all the
bye.
best.